Hi guys, welcome back. So it's been a couple months since I've last uploaded, but finally I am back on YouTube, and today I'm here to talk about two of probably the biggest movies of the summer, and they're both happen to be superhero movies. Superman by James Gunn and Marvel's newest entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, The Fantastic Four: First Steps. So these are probably maybe the two defining movies of the summer. They're the last two superhero movies we're getting pretty much until next year. Two of the biggest comic book characters of all time being the Fantastic Four and probably the biggest superhero of all time, Superman, duking it out at the box office. Marvel versus DC is a rivalry that's like several decades old at this point. So basically, I just wanted to look at both movies and see which one I think is the better comic book movie of the summer. So what's great about both movies is these are comic book movies. In the past, movies have kind of felt afraid to be comic booky or goofy or even a little bit corny. They've been really gray and dull. The suits have been redesigned to be modern and sleek. But both of these movies go back to the roots. These feel like comic book movies made by comic book lovers, down to the suits, the cinematography, the colors that pop off just like you're reading straight from the page, even the tones of the movies. Both of them are very comedic, slightly goofy, especially in Superman's case. This is a send up to the Silver Age of comics, but Fantastic Four also has the 60s setting. You can really tell the creators behind both these movies have a passion for the projects they're developing. James Gunn has talked at length about how much of a big fan of Superman he is and the specific comic book references that are included in this movie. Specifically, All-Star Superman feels like the biggest influence on this movie. And similarly, Fantastic Four feels straight out of a Jack Kirby comic book. I'm not super familiar with the Fantastic Four, at least not as much as I am with Superman, but even just from what I briefly know about them, this definitely feels like going back to the roots of Fantastic Four. It's a movie about family, warmth, and has that retroistic, almost like Tomorrowland-ish, retroistic future setting that is, I think, the movie's biggest strength. I think the performances also have a lot to do with how great both these movies are. Obviously, in Superman, David Corenswet and Rachel Brosnahan and Nicholas Hoult all, I think, have become the defining, maybe not defining, but my personal favorite adaptations of these characters in live action. I know many people will still say Chris Reeve is the best Superman, and that might be true. That might be your opinion. Maybe David Corenswet needs a little bit more time to breathe and grow, but in my opinion, that is the closest thing when I think of Superman is his performance, at least in live action. And same with the Fantastic Four characters. All of the core four, plus Galactus and the Silver Surfer, were phenomenal. I think they have, for the most part, become the defining adaptations of these characters. We'll get to that a little bit later when I'm talking about the negatives, because there is one performance I think didn't hold up to the rest. But for the most part, I think these are going to become the Fantastic Four, similar to Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, Chris Evans as Captain America, and so forth. Also, both of these are part of bigger standing universes. Superman is obviously the technically first movie in the new DCU, while Fantastic Four is, I think, the 37th movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the first of Phase 6, leading into Avengers Doomsday. But they both also have self-contained stories, and they are focused on the core characters in each movie, Superman and the Fantastic Four themselves. Both also have great scores. I think Fantastic Four beats out Superman just a little bit. I think Superman uses a little bit too much of the classic John Williams theme and doesn't have enough new score on its own, as at least nothing as good as what's in Fantastic Four. But of course you have the James Gunn pop soundtrack, which is always great. Both have fantastic villains. Lex Luthor and Galactus are two of the most iconic comic book villains of all time, and I think both of them were nailed perfectly. Lex Luthor is intimidating yet pathetic at the same time, while Galactus really has that like existential cosmic threat energy that is absolutely needed for the character, especially with how he's been treated in movies in the past. This was definitely among one of the best Marvel villains, at least in recent memory, if not of all time. And even the side characters in each movie were great. I thought the addition of the Justice Gang in Superman was really fun. I know a decent amount about Hawkgirl and Guy Gardner. Wasn't super familiar with Mr. Terrific, but he was honestly one of the standouts of the movie. And that's something James Gunn's really good at, is bringing up more obscure characters and putting them really at the forefront and making you like them. And the same can be said for Herbie and the Silver Surfer and the Fantastic Four. I thought they were both great additions. I thought Herbie had some of the funniest moments in the movie, and he was really fun to watch. And I think he was at least semi-practical, which was pretty cool to see. And the action scenes were great. There's a particular scene in the kind of middle point of Fantastic Four that was one of the better comic book movie scenes in a while, as well as the kaiju battle in Superman was a really fun moment. And I didn't even mention Krypto in Superman. I don't know how I did that, but yeah, I loved Krypto in it as well. I don't know who was the better part of each of their movies, Krypto or Herbie. I just know a lot of merch is going to be sold with those characters on it. But at the end of the day, it's just nice that both Marvel and DC are starting to put out consistently good projects. So whether you're a fan of both, I'm personally more of a DC guy, but I still enjoy Marvel comics and most of the movies. Thunderbolts was also great earlier this year. But yeah, it's just good that both these studios are putting out these good adaptations of these beloved characters once again. Now let's get to the negatives. Let's start with Superman, because that's the one that came out first and what I saw first. I honestly don't have too much negative to say about Superman. I do think it was a little bit overstuffed. I did say I enjoyed the side characters, but I don't think they were absolutely necessary to the story. I think you could have told this story just about Superman, Lois Lane, Lex Luthor, maybe a little bit more focus on the Clark Kent aspect of Superman. It feels like there's only really 2 scenes of him as Clark Kent. There's only 1 scene with his parents, which I would have liked to see more of. I would have liked a little bit deeper dive into his and Lois's relationship, a little bit more of the Daily Planet staff. Feels like a little bit of the actual Superman stuff got pushed aside sometimes in order to fit more of the Justice Gang and the wider world building to set up for future installments in the DCU. And I would have liked Superman to be a little bit more, not necessarily stoic, a little bit more mature or noble, maybe a little bit closer to what we got into in Superman the Animated Series, which this does borrow a lot from, but I feel, while I love David Corenswet's performance, and I think he is my favorite live-action Superman so far, I do think it was a little bit too much of the James Gunn humor, and that is another thing that I don't necessarily take as a negative, but you can. If you don't like the James Gunn style of movies, if you're not a fan of the Guardians movies, you're not going to like this at all. James Gunn has a very specific style, especially when it comes to his comic book movies, and this is another example of that. And I'm personally a big fan of his work. I think he's the best comic book director maybe going currently. When you look at his catalog of comic book movies, the quality of them are maybe better than any other director when it comes to making superhero movies. But, I mean, there is people who don't really take to that. They like a little bit more of a realistic or more serious tone. All of his movies are pretty lighthearted with emotional themes, but for the most part, I would say most of his superhero movies are comedies first. And that isn't going to work for everyone. So that would be, I guess, a kind of critique. And also, this is a negative for both movies. I do think some of the CGI in some parts looked a little bit off. Specifically, there's a scene in Superman that takes place in an alternate dimension that I thought didn't look too great. And same with Fantastic Four. A lot of the Silver Surfer looked pretty good. Some of the stuff with Franklin Richards looked a little bit off, and with Sue's powers. Just overall, the CGI in both movies wasn't the best, I feel like, but nothing super distracting to take away from it. With that being said, let's get into the negatives of Fantastic Four, which I just saw a couple days ago. So my biggest and probably most controversial take is I don't really feel like Pedro Pascal was the best choice for Reed Richards, but I also do know that there was some studio notes on his performance that he had to change up a lot. I just wasn't really feeling it for some reason. The voice he's doing, the little inflections he has, doesn't come across as the smartest man in the world. He comes across as someone acting like a super genius rather than me feeling like that is really who he is. It feels like an act that he's putting on. He also doesn't get to use his powers a lot, especially compared to the rest of the Fantastic Four. It definitely feels like this is a Sue-focused movie, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think with that, Reed kind of gets, at least when it comes to the action side, he kind of gets the short end of the stick. But when character development is considered, it's Ben, the Thing, that gets the short end of the stick. He was my favorite part of the movie, or my favorite of the four, I should say. I love Ebon Moss-Bachrach, if I'm saying that right. I love him in The Bear. I thought he was a fantastic choice for the Thing. And with what he's given, he's really good. It's just, he kind of just feels like this side comedy relief when the Thing is a much bigger character than that. We really don't get any of his struggle with, he's the only one who's been changed physically, or I should say his appearance has been changed, and his struggles dealing with that, with feeling like a monster or a freak. And I know it's been done before, but I feel like we could have done more with the Thing. There is a little love story with Natasha Lyonne's character, but she's in maybe like 3 minutes of the movie. I saw that a bunch of stuff got cut out, specifically related to the Thing, so it seems like the bulk of what was cut from this movie was Thing character development, and since he was my favorite, I would have liked to see a lot more of Ben in this movie. I also think, just in general, the Four's origins could have been explored a little bit more. I know the thing here was they didn't want to do another origin story, and the same thing with Superman, but I feel like Fantastic Four isn't as big in the general public's eye as Superman is. Everyone knows Superman's backstory, but I saw it with my girlfriend. She knows nothing about the Fantastic Four. She was a little bit lost just being thrown right into it like that. And even me, I know like the Fantastic Four's origin, but I still would have liked to seen it explored a little bit more than the opening montage where it's just maybe 2 sentences. And maybe this is also kind of a con for both movies, I guess. But a big element of both these movies is these are beloved superheroes, and something comes out about them, they have to tell a dark truth about themselves, and the public does a complete 180 on them, and then they do another complete 180 on them later in the movie. And neither times in both movies really felt earned or anything. It goes completely from them loving them to oh, you're monsters, we hate you, yada yada yada. But overall, I think both movies were really good and did a good job of capturing the essence of these characters. But which one's better? In my opinion, I'm gonna have to go with Superman. While I think both movies did a good job of representing these characters, telling an engaging story, I think Superman hit the emotional beats much more for me. That's something James Gunn's really good at. He's good at mixing comedy, but also he knows how to hit you with an emotional gut punch. He knows how to tap into raw emotion and make you feel something. I had a good time at Fantastic Four. It was charming, I would say. I would say I wanted these characters to succeed, and I wanted them to achieve their goal. But at no point was it wasn't anything more than a surface level, I hope the good guys win. I think Superman has the power to kind of change people's perspective, even just a little bit, about just, being a decent person, even when it seems like no one else is, always trying to do the right thing. I think James Gunn was just able to make something a little bit bigger than a comic book movie. And they're both good comic book movies, but this one stands out above the rest, I would say. But anyways, guys, that's going to be the video. I want you to tell me down in the comments below, if you've seen both, which one do you think was better? Fantastic Four or Superman? Do you agree with me or you disagree? If you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe, because I want to go back to making content regularly. I know it's been a while since I've uploaded a video, but if you've stuck around, I want to just say thank you, and please keep sticking around because I have a lot of ideas going forward. So just stay tuned. There will be more to come. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.